For this video, we're just having a little trip to Bishopwearmouth Cemetery, and we're going to talk about somebody famous, well, relatively famous from Sunderland's past, from the 1800s. So, Bishopwearmouth Cemetery, there's some of the rules. Now, if you come back here about probably 50 years ago, perhaps probably more than that, perhaps 70 years ago, one of the rules was you weren't even allowed to smoke in here. The gates would be locked. So there was totally strict rules compared to nowadays. Now, there's the lovely lodge. There used to be quite a few staff would work here. There was the superintendent of the cemetery. There was also a number of, like, what do you call them, like keepers who used to go around and check everything was okay on the morning. Now, the destination is just round the corner where I'm going to go, but I just want to show you something from the past. That is actually what's left of the bridge which went through the cemetery. Now, the Newbottle Waggonway used to run from, as its name says, over Newbottle down to the weir. So this is how they got the coal down to the ships waiting on the weir. The Lambton and Hetton, there was Lambton and Hetton drops down there. So the wagons would come over here, would go through where the cemetery is, and head over to the hospital and then head down through Millfield. Obviously that was before all the houses were built. So I think it was up until about the 1960s the bridge was still standing. You can see some pictures on the internet of what it looked like, and what they did is this road was actually sunken and the bridge went across, and then they've raised the level, took the bridge away. So there's just one of the last few remnants of, you can see like the buttresses, where the side of the bridge was. But there, if you ever walk past it, there it is, a trace of the Newbottle Waggonway. So we're just close to Chester Road, and the headstone is just up here, and the man it's for is William Blackett, who was born in Old Sunderland in July 1796. And when I say Old Sunderland, I mean the East End, Sunderland. And he was a man of, his family was of humble origins, but he became one of the foremost drapers in Sunderland and Bishopwearmouth. He opened a store on High Street West, which I think was about 1826, which then became a department store, and then there were several others round the northeast, and the name of the store carried on to, I think, the 1970s. The one in Sunderland, early 1970s, closed down. There was one even in my hometown, Barnard Castle, as well. And one of the reasons it closed down was that there was competition for, I think there was Joplin's, you had Bins, and I think Liverpool House and a few other big stores. So this is the destination, and this is the memorial. As you can see, it's quite empty around it, and the reason for that is because two of these spaces were purchased for two of the children, but they were never used because 6 of the 8 children died in Bournemouth. So I think they carried on running the business, obviously were kind of wealthy, and sort of lived the life down on the south coast once they retired from the business. So they were buried down there, so 2 of them were never used. But I think part of this headstone is actually missing because it only mentions William. It's hard to see, I'll just shut it down here. See, it states, also in loving memory of the above William Blackett, who died February the 2nd, 1879, and was interred in the Gill Cemetery. So his wife, Anne Middleton, is actually buried here. William isn't buried here. He was buried in the Gill Cemetery 4 days after this 6th of February 1879. So puts that into historical context. You know the film Zulu? Well, the events of Rorke's Drift were 10 days before William died, so that's the era it was. Now, William died at 19 Thornhill Terrace, which was a nice house, and Bishopwearmouth Cemetery opened in May 1856. It was a lovely cemetery out in the countryside, nice final resting place, but he wasn't buried here. He was buried in the Gill Cemetery in one of the old vaults. His family had a vault. Now, the Gill Cemetery closed in 1856, but if you could by license, you could be buried in one of the vaults if you were like a close relation, like a mother, father, husband or wife. So William was laid to rest in one of those particular vaults, and it was because two of his children, Emily and Thomas, Thomas I think was 20 when he died, and Emily was I think 14 months. I think she died in the 1840s, and Thomas was about 1852, 1853. So he was buried with two of his children rather than have a grand memorial up here. And if you look, a lot of the grand memorials are further up towards the chapel. So William is just mentioned here. So obviously the bit which mentions his wife Anne seems to have disappeared, because Anne died in 1882 at the same house in Thornhill Terrace, but she was buried at this particular spot here. So now the problem was with the Gill Cemetery, it had been closed by the time William was buried here for nearly 23 years. But it was an absolute dump, and it was a disgrace to the town. It even went to the Home Secretary. It was an eyesore. It was vandalised. It was left in to pretty much fall apart and a bit of a rubbish dump. So I'd always wondered why William wasn't laid to rest here, but simply was because they already had a vault, so they put him in here. But his wife was called Anne Middleton, who was a Glasgow-born lady, and she died just 3 years after him in, I think it was 1882. Now that leads on to another thing. When you go to all these like municipal cemeteries, you'll see mentions of where people's relatives were buried within Sunderland. So you might have one gentleman such as William Rickaby, he's buried here, but his first wife's at the churchyard in Sunderland, and his second wife is at the Gill Cemetery, and then I think his third wife is in here. So it would be this case because people sort of move between Monkwearmouth, some people moved between Monkwearmouth, Bishopwearmouth, Sunderland, and had ties in all the places. So you could get families spread all over the place. So with the Gill Cemetery, it's always handy when you find out on one of these memorials that somebody was buried there, because most people between 1839 and 1856 in Bishopwearmouth were laid to rest in the Gill Cemetery, but the Bureau records don't state which particular churchyard or the Gill Cemetery they were buried in. So you don't really know 100% unless you have the headstones and so on. So that's William Blackett there. He's not, as I said, he's not actually buried there. I'll just show you. We'll go and see one more interesting grave before the heavens open, because it's an absolutely dark, miserable late evening. As you can see, Bishopwearmouth is an absolutely huge cemetery. This isn't the original size because there was an extension built up towards the western side later on after it was built. It's not far to go. There's a lovely Celtic cross. Mentioned in some of the videos before about Edwin Smyth, who was a fine monumental mason. He also did lots of different styles, and where he was good at doing mosaics and lettering. He actually had his place of work just across at Westlands, in one of the houses that have been since been demolished. But look at this fine headstone. And this is to the memory of Anne Sophia Pruitt, for 13 years Superintendent Nurse of the Union Hospital, born 9th of September 1860, died 19th of October 1910. And that was erected by officials, nurses and friends, so she was obviously respected. And you can see, look at that, it's beautiful. And so, but there's lots of Edwin's work across the cemeteries of Sunderland and even further afield. I think the lettering on the Whitburn Great War Memorial, he was helped create. I'll just see that I think there's another one. This one's of interest because of the epitaph. This one is to the memory of Cara, the dear daughter of Ralph and Caroline Knox, who fell asleep 30th of November 1915. Now they, again, like William, I think they were on Thornhill Terrace or Thornhill Crescent. But the epitaph they chose, it's one of my favourites, is, "Who plucketh that flower, said the master, the flowers are mine, may I not take the best?" And the gardener was silent. So that was a memory to Cara, the dear daughter of Ralph and Caroline Knox. I believe he was sort of a contractor, he might have been a councillor as well. So that was just a little look at William Blackett's headstone. There is the full story on Sunderland history, and I think there's a couple of articles I've done in there. One is called, I think it's just called The Draper or William Blackett, and there's much more detail into his life and his family and stuff. So thank you very much for watching. If you do like this, please give it a like and click on the subscribe for future videos. Thank you.